For over 300 years, Oak Island has been hiding a secret so dangerous that everyone who got close to it was stopped. Some by flooding tunnels, some by sudden collapses, and some by never being seen again. But today, for the first time in history, the tunnel known as the Forbidden Tunnel has been opened. And what was found inside didn't just shock treasure hunters. It terrified scientists. This wasn't a normal tunnel. The walls were engineered in a way modern technology still can't fully explain. The water flow moved against natural physics, and carved into the stone were markings that were never meant to be seen. That's when one disturbing question changed everything. Was Oak Island built to protect a treasure, or to imprison something? Because here's the part no one is talking about. This tunnel wasn't opened by accident. It was opened on purpose. Subscribe now and stay curious, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why Oak Island's real secret was never gold, but something powerful enough to rewrite history itself. The breakthrough didn't come from a dramatic dig or a lucky strike. Ironically, it started with something everyone else had overlooked. The Oak Island crew had been reviewing last season's seismic scans, trying to pinpoint the exact shape of what they believed was a rectangular chamber beneath the money pit. Nothing in the data suggested a new lead, until a technician noticed an anomaly buried so deep in the readings that it shouldn't have been visible at all. It was a thin, perfectly linear void running beneath layers of collapsed stone, a formation that didn't resemble any natural fracture or sink channel known on Oak Island. The outline was too clean, too controlled, almost engineered. At first, the team thought it was a distortion in the data, a false reflection caused by saturated soil. But when they reran the scan using the newer, higher-frequency equipment, the anomaly didn't disappear. It sharpened. The tunnel was real, and it wasn't part of the documented flood system. It ran parallel to it, deeper, hidden between two geological layers where no one should have been able to dig centuries ago. Rick Lagina was the first to react, leaning over the monitor with a look that blended fascination and dread. He'd spent years trying to prove Oak Island's secrets were far older and far more sophisticated than mainstream history claimed. And now, here was evidence. A straight, reinforced corridor buried in an era long before modern engineering existed. When the drill team lowered a test shaft toward the anomaly, the bit passed through dense clay, then brick-like material, and finally a hollow space that caused the torque to drop instantly. The crew froze. Cameras rolled. You could hear the tension in every breath. They had hit a tunnel no one even knew existed. Then came the detail that changed everything. The tunnel wasn't empty. The borehole camera revealed smooth walls carved by tools, not water, covered in sediment that hadn't been disturbed in centuries. Strange mineral deposits clung to the ceiling like frost, and at the far end of the camera's limited view, a mass of stacked stones formed a perfect artificial barrier. Someone built a tunnel beneath Oak Island and then intentionally sealed it. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a collapse. It was a warning, and the team had just opened the first crack in a mystery that was never meant to be found. The moment the team cleared the last layer of stone around the borehole and prepared to cut an access channel into the Forbidden Tunnel, the island responded in a way none of them had experienced before. It began with a shift, subtle, almost like the ground exhaling, but enough to send loose gravel sliding across the boards. Then a cold draft rose from the opening, brushing past the crew's faces with a chill that felt unnaturally deep, as if it had traveled through untouched chambers far beneath their feet. Rick ordered a quick environmental reading. The temperature inside the void was dropping fast, far faster than the soil around it should allow. Seconds later, Every radio crackled with static. Communications began to break down. When Gary Drayton scanned the borehole edge with his detector, expecting light interference, the unit exploded with an overload so intense he almost lost his grip. The machine shrieked with metal signals from every angle, ricocheting with readings so packed it felt like a lightning storm buried underground. Marty attempted to reassure the crew, claiming it had to be mineral content or abandoned iron scraps, but the evidence disagreed. The signals weren't random. They were focused, arranged along the tunnel sides, like metal had been deliberately embedded into the corridor. Seeking better answers, the team lowered a second high-resolution camera into the shaft. Initially, the slim light beam showed only dust floating through frigid air. But as the camera pushed farther, the walls emerged. Sleek, refined surfaces shaped with accuracy no early colonists should have achieved. The symmetry was too exact, too deliberate. This wasn't crude digging, it was planned construction. Then the image flickered, not a normal loss of signal, but a sharp jolt. A sudden concussive distortion that twisted the footage for an instant. When the image stabilized, the camera faced the barrier at the tunnel's distant end. A wall formed from layered stone blocks packed so tightly that even the camera's tiny lights couldn't expose the joints. The stones carried the same unusual clay found earlier, a sealing compound centuries ahead of its era. The crew observed dust glide across its surface until the entire wall trembled, just a faint vibration, but enough to rattle the camera. The tunnel responded not to pressure, not to equipment, but to human presence. Rick stepped away from the screen. "This isn't merely a tunnel," he murmured. "It's guarded." With that understanding, an unsettling thought took hold. If the tunnel existed to block something out, what was it working so hard to trap inside? The choice to break through the sealed barrier wasn't taken casually. Every specialist present knew the wall at the end of the restricted tunnel wasn't debris or coincidence. It was built deliberately. Someone long ago designed the blockage using limestone blocks, sealed with a rust-colored clay packed so tightly it created an airtight barrier. The blend baffled the chemists. Part waterproof layer, part bonding material, part unknown substance entirely. Whatever its function, it had preserved its seal for generations. The team set up a custom drilling system to open a controlled breach without damaging the tunnel structure. As the drill bit into the barrier, the stone moaned with a deep, hollow vibration that felt almost alive, echoing through the borehole like a warning cry from the past. Dust rose slowly in twisting streams, glowing eerily in the light. The air turned colder, denser. Even veteran drill operators traded nervous looks. Oak Island had never reacted this way. Exactly 16 inches into the barrier, the drill broke through. Instantly, everything shifted. A surge of air rushed from the opening, not cold like before, but warm, disturbingly warm, as if sealed within a chamber deep underground. The camera lens fogged and cleared in a single moment. Then came the noise, a deep metallic groan that came from neither drill, rig, nor stone. It came from inside the tunnel. Rick's eyes went wide. Marty leaned in, attempting to pinpoint the source of the vibration. But before anyone could respond, the freshly opened breach expanded by itself, as though pressure trapped for centuries had finally been given escape. When the dust cleared and the camera moved ahead, the reality revealed itself. The wall hadn't been a simple partition. It was a doorway. Beyond it, the tunnel dropped sharply into a steep, expertly shaped descent. The slope was calculated, almost unnervingly exact. The walls carried the same polished finish seen earlier, but here the tool impressions were cleaner, deeper, more intentional. Whoever carved this passage had worked with purpose. They weren't aiming for the surface. They were heading toward something buried far beneath. Laser scans showed the descending tunnel aimed straight toward an area beneath the money pit, a zone thought inaccessible due to historic cave-ins and flooding. Yet here existed a passage that avoided it all, concealed so deeply no explorer in more than 200 years had discovered it. Rick spoke softly, voicing what everyone felt. "This isn't a treasure shaft," he paused. "It's access. Access to what remained unknown." But as the camera beam stretched farther into the dark, the answer felt nearer and far more dangerous than ever. The crew understood the sharp descent into the newly exposed tunnel was too risky for human entry, so they deployed the rover, a small tracked robot outfitted with floodlights, ultrasonic scanners, and a reinforced frame designed for unstable underground terrain. As the rover descended into darkness, the video feed flickered, then steadied, showing smooth, slanted walls that looked engineered rather than simply carved. Every angle, every curve matched perfectly, as if built from plans far beyond the primitive tools of early settlers. Midway down, the rover's instruments detected hollow spaces branching from the main tunnel. At first, they appeared as minor scan irregularities, possibly natural voids. But as the rover approached, the truth became clear. These weren't geological accidents. They were alcoves, evenly shaped recesses carved directly into the tunnel walls. Some were sealed with stone, others partially collapsed, but all shared identical measurements. One alcove, however, remained open. When the rover aimed its lights inside, the team spotted remnants of wooden braces burned black by age, metal rings fused into the stone, and what appeared to be shattered supports strewn across the floor. This wasn't leftover excavation debris. It was the remains of a mechanism, possibly a trap system meant to collapse the tunnel if activated. The realization sent a cold wave through the crew. If this had been a trap, then the tunnel wasn't merely a passage. It was a guarded route, a final option route. The rover pressed deeper, its tracks softly scraping against the limestone floor. Moisture levels rose quickly, fogging the lens with heavy droplets. Rick activated the wiper system, watching the view clear to reveal the next stretch of tunnel, marked by long parallel grooves carved into the stone. The grooves were straight, evenly spaced, and far too precise to be natural. Archaeologists watching remotely suggested they might be tracks from sled runners or rails, channels cut into stone centuries before such technology should have existed on the island. As the rover pushed forward, the ground leveled out, and the tunnel bent sharply to the right. The camera adjusted, and there it stood, another obstruction. But unlike the first, this one wasn't stone. It wasn't wood. It wasn't clay-bound masonry. It was metal. A massive metallic wall rising from floor to ceiling, its surface dulled by age, yet clearly artificial. The rover's floodlights reflected off faint geometric engravings, intersecting triangles and lines carved at precise angles that hinted at mathematical understanding far beyond anything Oak Island's known builders ever had. Rick leaned nearer to the screen, murmuring, "This shouldn't be here. Not in this place. Not in this era." No one argued, because far beneath the island, concealed behind ancient stonework and sabotage systems, the team had encountered something impossible. Something that didn't belong underground, didn't belong on Oak Island, and perhaps was never meant to be discovered. And the longer they studied the metallic surface, the clearer one truth became. This wasn't merely concealing a secret. It was protecting it. The crew stared at the rover's feed in stunned silence. A metal wall buried this far beneath Oak Island wasn't just unexpected. It was impossible. No colonial settlers, no pirates, No secret brotherhood from the 1600s or 1700s possessed the capability to build something like this. The barrier's surface wasn't rough or eroded, but smooth and deliberately formed, reflecting the rover's lights with a muted glow that suggested an alloy far more advanced than iron or early steel. Chemical scans only intensified the mystery. The rover's onboard instruments registered magnetic readings that rose and fell in uneven pulses, almost as if the wall itself was reacting to their presence. It wasn't simply metal. It was designed, layered, intentional. When the camera zoomed closer, faint symbols came into focus. Not hand-carved markings, but etched designs, intersecting triangles, straight lines, repeating angles that resembled fragments of a coded system. One archaeologist watching remotely likened them to early navigational symbols, while another argued they resembled Proto-Templar mapping signs. But even those explanations collapsed as the rover scanned deeper. The markings weren't chaotic. They followed a repeating pattern, a geometric language suggesting measurement, calibration, or warning. Rick's voice sank to a hush. "This is organized." Before the team could study the symbols further, the rover registered vibration, faint, steady, rhythmic, not from drilling, not from activity above, but from behind the wall. A low, deliberate hum that grew stronger with every passing moment. Marty leaned forward, eyes wide. "That's not natural. Something's producing it." A sudden spike hit the sensors, jolting the rover's frame. Loose sediment fell from the ceiling as the wall emitted a metallic groan, the sound metal makes when it shifts under strain. But strain from what? The data made one thing undeniable. Whatever existed behind that barrier wasn't inactive. And if the wall had been built to contain something, then opening it could be the most dangerous choice the Oak Island team had ever considered. With the metallic barrier vibrating more intensely by the minute, the team knew their window to investigate was slim before the tunnel became too unstable to enter. Engineers positioned a hydraulic spreader against the weakest seam identified by thermal imaging. At first, nothing budged. The wall resisted every ounce of force, bending slightly but not breaking, far tougher than any alloy expected beneath Oak Island. Then, with a sharp metallic crack, the seam gave way. A rush of trapped air burst outward, warm, stale, carrying the scent of minerals and something far older. The rover's lens fogged instantly before clearing to reveal what lay beyond. A chamber far larger than any previously mapped underground space opened into view. The walls were carved straight from bedrock, smoothed with precision impossible for hand tools. Wooden platforms that once lined the perimeter had collapsed into rotted remains, scattering fragments across the stone floor. Rusted chains hung from anchor points cut high into the walls, swaying faintly as if disturbed for the first time in centuries. But the center of the chamber seized the team's attention. A circular depression filled with perfectly still water, so calm it mirrored the rover's lights like black glass. Around the basin, carved shelves lined the stone. Empty shelves. Whatever had been stored here was long gone, removed deliberately. Then the camera tilted upward. Symbols etched above the shelves glowed faintly under the rover's lights. Ancient angular markings unrelated to English, French, Latin, or any colonial script. One symbol repeated more than the others, an eye enclosed within a triangle. Rick swallowed hard. If this was the vault... His voice trailed off because the vault was empty. And yet the chamber's unsettling stillness made one thing certain. Something had been here. Something important enough to bury deeper than any treasure. And whatever it was, someone had taken it. At first, the team assumed the water at the center of the chamber was ordinary, stagnant, silent. But as the rover shifted for a better angle, the surface trembled. A single ripple formed, spreading outward, then vanished. No air draft, no falling debris, no rover movement could explain it. Then it happened again. A second ripple, rhythmic this time, a pulse. Rick leaned in, brow furrowed. "That's not random," he muttered. And he was right. The ripples followed a pattern. 2 pulses, a pause, then one deep tremor sending a faint ring across the basin. It seemed the chamber itself was reacting to the intrusion, communicating through vibrations. The rover's sensors confirmed a larger cavity beneath the stone floor, directly under the pool. Hollow, unmapped, and filled with something denser than water. When the sonar pinged again, the signal returned distorted, as if bouncing off something moving. The team went silent. Another ripple rose to the surface, bigger this time. The vibration traveled up the rover's treads into the surrounding floor, shaking dust from the cavern walls. A low, resonant hum echoed through the chamber, neither mechanical nor geological, but something in between, like pressure shifting inside a confined system. Gary whispered what everyone else was thinking. "Something's down there." Before anyone could react, the ripple pattern sped up. The water quivered in faster pulses, each stronger than the last. The chamber's walls shook, sending tiny rock fragments tumbling into the pool. Then the water rose in a slow, unnatural bulge, not boiling, not splashing, ascending as if something beneath Oak Island was pushing against it. The chamber wasn't just a vault. It was a lid, and whatever it had contained was stirring. As the water swelled, the rover's sensors spiked wildly. The temperature dropped 5 degrees in under 10 seconds. Pressure inside the chamber surged, bending the rover's frame as though unseen hands were squeezing the very air. Before the team could respond, a deep vibration rolled through the floor, slow, heavy, deliberate, like the heartbeat of something buried far below the island.